With a draft just days away, we continue scouting some players that could be available when Miami makes their selection, and moreover, that could find a way to add some talent and youth to the roster. Can Arizona's Dalen Terry impact winning in Miami? Is Ohio State's EJ Liddell the perfect fit for Heat culture? We'll answer that and more on today's NBA Draft edition of Locked On Heat.
I'm taking 10 blue notebooks with me to Malibu with my wife. Blue notebooks. Blue notebooks. Blue notebooks. 10 blue notebooks to Malibu. Blue notebooks. Blue notebooks. Blue notebooks. 10 blue notebooks to Malibu.
My life.
Hello, Heat Nation. It's a Thursday edition of Locked On Heat, your daily podcast covering all things Miami Heat, however you may be listening or watching on YouTube, Odyssey, or on your favorite podcast app. Thanks so much for making us your first listen every day. I am David Ramil, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Wes Goldberg. Locked On is partnering with Arcade OneUp to give away 3 NBA Jam Shaq Edition machines. Stay tuned for later in the show to learn how to enter. We're continuing our scouting series, our Blue Notebook scouting key players that might be available to Miami when they make the 27th pick in the draft. And so we'll talk about some of the players that might be available and, again, could contribute to Miami in the short term, because while they might be developmental projects, at the same time, they'll be able to chip in right away because this is a roster that's already competing for championships. They just need somebody else to fit in perfectly and add to their winning ways. And no player does that more than Ohio State's EJ Liddell. Oh boy, we are excited to talk about this guy because he is a fantastic prospect, a 3-year player at Ohio State, elected to come back for his junior season in Ohio State, again, to compete for a championship, but also to continue tweaking on some things in his game and make some more improvements, because he has shown steady improvement over those 3 years that he was at Ohio State. He's 6'7", roughly, maybe a little bit shorter than that, 6'7" with shoes, let's say, with a 7-foot wingspan. So impressive measurements there. 240 pounds, solid, built like a truck. Low body fat percentage, explosive, just a great athlete overall. 21 years old, of course, a little bit on the older side because he did spend those 3 years at Ohio State. Yeah. But a fantastic prospect for any team that's looking to, again, add to their winning ways. He entered the draft, again, as a sophomore. He's improved every year on both sides of the ball. So he's the leading scorer for the Buckeyes. He's a steady shooter. He does so many things well, and just a great overall prospect. What are your just general takeaways on EJ Liddell before we go into the nitty-gritty?
Compares himself to PJ Tucker, Grant Williams, Draymond Green, watches a ton of film on those guys, and it shows. Yep. I mean, he plays a lot like all of those guys. He reminds me so much of PJ Tucker defensively. 6'7" with a near 7-foot wingspan, and you mentioned the muscle and everything. He plays with his chest out. He's got really good lower body strength. He doesn't get moved off his spots. He can switch along the perimeter really smoothly. And then against Duke, went one-on-one with Paolo Banchero in the post, blocked his shot during the Big Ten ACC Challenge. Defended Paolo really, really well there, so he could play 1 through 5. I mean, he could defend 1 through 5 at the collegiate level. At the NBA level, we'll see, but the potential is certainly there. He kind of looks like Draymond Green a little bit in transition with the way that he likes to play make and do all of those things. He's probably a better rim protector than either of PJ Tucker, Grant Williams, or like today's Draymond Green too. 2.6 blocks per game, and the best standing vertical leap tested at the NBA Combine at 35.5 inches. I mean, there's a lot to like there. I know he's slightly undersized, but we've seen guys recently like Grant Williams get to the NBA, take a couple of years, but then really blossom and become, fulcrums of their respective team's defense. So I really like this EJ Liddell.
Yeah, absolutely. The defensive instincts. Let's go through the pros. The defensive instincts are just unparalleled. At a collegiate level, he just seems to have a knack for when to shed off his player and when to kind of hedge, when to kind of crowd the lane. There's a great film study video that we suggest that you go to anybody's YouTube channel, but there's a great film study video with I can't remember exactly who it was from ESPN.
ESPN, Mike Schmitz. Yeah, he does these great scouting breakdowns, and he sits down with EJ Liddell after a workout or practice, and they just go through the film together, and it's really cool to kind of see the players and
the mentality, the prospect, the way he's going through everything, and he's going, this is my understanding of this player. This is what I have to do next. That's incredible. That for a player to have that kind of, again, innate understanding and not just innate, also an incredible work ethic. That's another one of his pros. Fantastic worker, extremely dedicated. To hear him in any interview is to close your eyes and imagine a Heat player. The way he
Yes.
talks about winning
Yeah.
ways. All I care about is winning. That's what you're going to get with me is a winner. I'm dedicated. I like to work. Oh, great quote from him in that video we were just talking about. Great work ethic. Quote unquote, first team all sweat. I love it. This is a Heat player made in a Heat laboratory by Eric Spoelstra and Pat Riley. He just goes out there to win. The rotations are excellent. You talked about him being able to move his feet with a smaller guard. He just puts his chest out as he's moving his feet, keeping his balance, and you just bounce off him. We saw a number of players, over the course of his career at Ohio State, just have trouble getting a comfortable shot because, well, Liddell just doesn't move.
Well, top guards, like Wisconsin's Johnny Davis and Bryce McGowan out of Nebraska, like other guys that he like. These are some of the top guards in this draft in his Big Ten conference that he would just routinely go up against, and just he switches onto him. You don't even realize it's a big man switching. It's just he talked to too about like the rules that they have at Ohio State and all these. Every team has defensive rules that they go by, and they basically let Liddell switch everything. And that just goes to show you how much trust they had in him. He's also a great communicator. You could see him pointing and yelling and shouting at his teammates and stuff on that end, which is another thing defensively that you like. And you mentioned sort of like the Heat culture vibe. I totally get it. You could already see him at FTX, like at the podium, sort of answering questions. Like he just has that kind of feel to him. I also love the humility. Like you see so many young players being like, I want to be Steph Curry. I want to be Giannis. I want to be Kevin Durant. He's like, I'm good being Grant Williams. And you're like, okay.
Draymond is as far-fetched a comparison as he's willing to make. He's like,
it's the only Hall of Famer he's going to compare himself to is Draymond Green.
PJ Tucker. Nobody goes in the league and says, man, I can't wait to be a 37-year-old journeyman. That is a realistic approach to what you can bring to the table. And look, he's fully admitting when we're talking about his cons now. He knows he's undersized, but he also uses it as a motivator. Like even that, he takes, maybe I'm a little smaller than your typical front court player. I don't care. I'm going to go out there and impact winning. That's just what he does. He's a little uncomfortable off the dribble as well. He's not as smooth a ball handler as you might think, given the fact that he was tasked with being the team's leading scorer. His shooting form, although his mechanics are solid, they can get a little choppy. There are moments there where he kind of just he has a little hitch in his motion there, and catch and shoot opportunities. He's like kind of like Bam-esque, to be honest with you, where he's kind of like seizing up the floor. He's just kind of figuring things out. Should I get this shot going? Should I unload? And then he kind of takes that shot maybe a half a second too late, and all of a sudden it hits off the front of the rim there because it's just not fantastic. And again,
he shot 37.4% on 3.8 3-point attempts per game. You tend to see that go down from college to the NBA, obviously, because the 3-point line is a little bit different and the spacing is different. The turnover issue is a big one. If he's looking to be Draymond Green or something like that, he's all right in transition. He's good at the hit-ahead passes. He's got good floor vision. In the half court is where I have my questions with him. His assist to turnover ratio is really bad. 2.5 assists to 2.4 turnovers. Some of that might be a function to the fact that he was asked to be such a scorer at Ohio State. I actually think he's one of the players he'll be better in the NBA in a lesser, more restricted scoring role, right?
Specified role, right?
Yeah, just like, hey man, like stand in the corner, make those threes from there, and then attack the dribble, two dribbles at most on a straight line drive, get to that float game or whatever it is. He's not a great finisher, kind of struggled to score in the paint and stuff like that. But these are things that you learn.
Rushes a shot.
Yeah, rushes a shot. Good point. And these are some of the things that you learn. Got to tighten the handle, get all that kind of stuff. But certainly a lot there that you like on the defensive end and enough to work with on the offensive end.
Yeah, no doubt. We'll talk a little bit more about how he projects as an NBA level player. Will he be a fringe player? Will he be a potential all-star or somewhere in between? And we'll also talk about an Arizona prospect that seems like he might be a little raw, but could contribute right away. And before we do that, however, just a reminder that Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar. You don't even know that you're tasting a protein bar. It's just great. Today, I got a box delivered to my home, gave them to a family member. They tried them. They had no idea what they were in for. They loved them. It's the new mud pie.
Mud pie. My fiance had it. She actually stole it, did not tell me she was taking it, and then called me from work and said, this is the best Built Bar I've ever had. Because, of course, we've got boxes on stacked in the refrigerator or whatever all around the kitchen. So she grabbed it. She's like, this is the best one I've ever had.
So that's still open disclosure there. It's not like she stole it. She took it
Well, she
beforehand, and then afterwards
told
you
me.
mentioned, "Oh, I did." Well, that's possible. Like, look, that's the kind of jealousy and possessiveness that Built Bars inspires. It's like they're mine. They're my Built Bars. I want them all for myself, and you can have them too. You can get a box of all your mixed different flavors. So many different flavors to choose from, and they're adding new ones all the time. Go to built.com right now. Use the promo code LOCK15 and you get 15% off your next order. They've got all kinds of different, they fit all kinds of different diets, all the nutrients you might be looking for, low in carbs, low in calories, high in taste, covered in 100% chocolate. You cannot go wrong with Built Bar. So go to built.com right now. Use the promo code LOCK15 and you too can get 15% off your next order of Built Bar. The first picks of the Ultimate NBA Mock Draft have been made. Search now for the Ultimate NBA Mock Draft and get over 50 insiders, the Odyssey sports experts, the draft experts of the Locked On NBA Big Board. This 5-episode Ultimate NBA Mock Draft is underway, so make Ultimate NBA Mock Draft your second listen. Today, we are continuing our Blue Notebook series as we look at a couple of different key prospects from around the country that might be able to fit in and add to Miami's winning ways. We just talked about E.J. Liddell from Ohio State. And now you're going to be breaking down a player from Arizona named Dalen Terry.
Yeah, so the nuts and bolts on Dalen Terry. 6'7" guard with a 7'1" wingspan, 19 years old, averaged 8 points a game on 50.2% shooting, made 36.4% of his threes. He also averaged 4.8 rebounds, 3.9 assists. So one of these guys who really sort of stuffs the box score. And the reason why is he plays with such a high motor, so much energy, David. He projects as a plus defender, a good playmaker, very raw offensively, needs to prove that he can make shots, especially at the NBA level, where things are obviously going to be more difficult. But you like the tools, a really toolsy kind of guy, a lot of length, a lot of athleticism, and a lot of energy to work with.
I have to agree. Like watching him play, maybe nothing necessarily stands out. Again, we keep struggling with players who seem to do a lot of things sort of well and not necessarily at an elite level. But those players tend to find a way to figure it out, have a way to contribute. Now, it's rare, and it does happen. They could find a way to flounder. They just can't seem to find their role. But at least they've got a foundation in that they can do other things well. They're not going to go out there and just stagnate the offense or defense, as it were. They're going to be able to find a way. They can cover a lot of grounds. In Terry's case, he's a long player. He can block shots. He can stay in front of an opponent. He can do a lot of things well, and I think that bodes well for his NBA career.
Yeah, I don't know that I agree with you. When I watch him, the thing that stands out to me is the energy. Like that's the thing that like he's always
That's something. Yeah,
he's always moving. And I mean, it's rare. I don't really see a lot of players in today's NBA doing that. Like people talk about movement all the time, and just so many players just stand around all the time. And a lot of that is conditioning. You look at a guy like Steph Curry right now, and just he's always moving, and it's there's a willingness to do it. There's a basketball IQ portion of it, but there's also just a raw conditioning part of it, which is certainly part of it. And with Terry, I like the athleticism is right there. And like I said, if you can harness that and kind of refine some of the skills there, I think you really have something. He runs the floor really well. He could switch everything defensively. At Arizona, they ran a very ball movement and motion movement heavy system on both sides. A lot of switching defensively, a lot of motion offensively, a lot of dribble handoffs, a lot of passing full court, a lot of some of the triggers that we see the Heat's offense have. Arizona has some of that too, some of those pistol actions and things like that. Dalen Terry played in that. And one of the other things I liked about his role at Arizona was he was the guy, again, at 19 years old, as a first-year player or a second-year player, who was trusted to inbound the ball almost always. And I thought that was pretty interesting. When the coach trusts you to inbound the ball, that means they like your decision-making. And so that was part of it. The minuses with him. Unselfish to a fault, maybe, which kind of fits in with what the Heat like, because it feels like a lot of their players are unselfish that way. And unselfish to a fault, can pass up shots. And you can tell he's maybe not that confident in that outside shot, in that 3-point shot, right? Slow release. The mechanics look all right, but he's really slow to get it up. A little hesitant, a little mechanical. Needs to improve on that. And then he does play a little out of control sometimes, especially in the half court. A little indecisive, almost like too much energy, a little too much kinetic, rampant energy, and he just doesn't really know what to do with it for him. So those would be my minuses.
Is a fine line for him? Like, is he just young and that's why he's got the energy and he just hasn't been able to continue to explore those aspects of the game? Do you see him as a player that you think can be fine tuned, or is he just going to be perpetually raw? If he doesn't enter into the right system, and we've seen this before, like players that are just, maybe they're just a little bit all over the place. They can't seem to figure it out. Like, what do you think is the fine line for him as far as whether he's just a player that's not going to
Yeah,
necessarily?
I think if you give him a defined role, sort of similar to what we were talking about with Liddell offensively, if you do that with Dalen Terry, he was asked to do so much at Arizona. I mean, he really was their lead playmaker at that point guard spot. If you narrow his role a little bit, maybe make him more of a secondary attacker. Hey, swing over here, and then we'll find you on the weak side, and then you could attack with a few dribbles off of a bent defense. I could see him really thriving in that kind of role where he doesn't have so many playmaking responsibilities, but could still obviously make those plays off of a roll or, going against a bent defense and spraying out to a shooter in the other, the corner or something like that. Like his passing chops are pretty good.
Solid,
You like his instincts there. So I think there's a lot to work with, and he's not a willing 3-point shooter, but he probably took more than he needed to, considering how raw he is in that as well, over the aggregate of the entire season. So if you get him open shots, I think there's a lot to work with. And he needs to get stronger. He needs to get bigger. So if he does that, there's a lot of athleticism, really lengthy. And so he's going to be a good defender just between the high energy output and the switchiness and the length there. He's going to be able to get on the floor as a defender, I think, pretty early. And it's just whether or not he can make shots and succeed in a limited role early on.
Do you see him? Yeah, you see him project more as an impact player on defense then and being able to find his offense eventually? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the player comps for him have been they're Andre Iguodala, Will Barton, DeLon Wright.
Ooh, Will Barton.
I see him as like a Scottie. Will Barton, like streaky. Like there's games where you watch Will Barton. It's like, all right, you got your 3-point shot falling. He's always going to bring it defensively. I think Will Barton's a pretty good one. Kind of a Scottie Barnes-lite, the way that Arizona used him compared to how Florida State used Scottie Barnes and then Toronto, obviously. Like really long type of point guard in a small forward type of body, who could switch a bunch of different positions. Now, Scottie Barnes could switch 1 through 5. I don't think that Terry could switch 1 through 5. He's probably more of a 1 through 3 right now, maybe smaller 4s. But as he gets bigger, I could see him switching onto 4s, especially with that wingspan.
Yeah, he's lean, but I mean, his frame is such that scouts will tell you that he can afford to pack on more muscle, and I think that he can, given the right system. I don't think that's necessarily was the emphasis during his 1 year at Arizona. So, I mean, anything else that you want to add about Terry?
No, all right. We got the upside scale coming up next, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We got to talk about their projected fit in Miami and exactly how they might fit in as players at the NBA level. Can they be fringe players, rotation players, or something even more? But before we do that, as I hinted at before, Arcade One is shaking things up. Boom shakalaka. That's right. The big news is that NBA Jam is back and Arcade One Up is the leader at home retro arcade games. They're not only just bringing the best game ever back, but they've made it bigger than ever with a, wait for it, Shaq Edition machine. That's right. People are obsessed with NBA Jam. Wes, cue up the sound effect. Come on,
He's on fire!
That's right. That's right. We're thrilled to tell our listeners that you can once again play hoops with NBA legends in the Arcade Classic. Jump clear across the court, set the ball on fire in one of the first sports games ever to feature real and digitized NBA licensed teams. No fouls, no free throws, and no quarters required. Compete with friends and family through all new Wi-Fi leaderboards. So that's something a little different, making you more connected than ever. Pre-order now from arcade1up.com. That's arcade, then the number 1, the word up.com for an estimated early September ship date. So just in time for the holidays. Arcade One Up is the place for fun. They've got even more classics like Golden Tee, Mortal Kombat, and many more, starting at just $3.99. Check this out. They're also giving away an NBA Jam Shaq Edition to a Locked On listener. You can enter for a chance to win a game console for your man cave or home in general at arcade1up.com/locked on. That's arcade, the number 1, the word up.com/locked on. You've got till July 8th to enter to win the NBA Jam Shaq Edition. Don't miss out. Enter today. Who are you going to play with? Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Just a reminder that you can always reach us via email at lockedonheat@gmail.com or via Twitter using the hashtag AskLOHeat. Be sure to please subscribe to the show and leave a review. We're continuing our exit interview series. We've talked about EJ Liddell from Ohio State. We talked about Dalen Terry from Arizona. Let's get into Liddell's upside scale. And you and I are both in agreement. Just a reminder to listeners that didn't catch our first episode of the Blue Notebook series. We're breaking it down into whether or not you're a fringe player, basically kind of finding your way into the NBA, your chances of becoming a steady contributor or a rotation type player. Can you be an all-star? And ultimately, can you take the great leap and become a superstar in this league? With Liddell, we're both convinced there is a zero chance of him being a fringe player. Like, barring something unforeseen, catastrophic, there is no way that he will not find a way to be a contributor. He is such a player dedicated to winning, to improvement, to work. Again, to hear him speak is to hear a Heat player. The way he talks about his commitment to that work, to the game, to the sweat equity that you put into becoming a better player, he will find a way to succeed. Maybe he's not going to become a great player, but he will absolutely become a rotation level player, which is why I have his chances of becoming a solid contributor at around 90%, with a slight 10% chance of him perhaps eking out an all-star level career, maybe flirting with an all-star level game at an all-star level season at one point or another throughout his career. A Paul Millsap type, right? Would you call Paul Millsap an all-star level player? Well, he's been to the all-star a few games, but he's also been a solid, great rotational player throughout his career. Never a guy that you have to worry about. Even now at the end of his career, he's still a rotation level player. Maybe Sixers fans wouldn't necessarily agree with that, but never quite a superstar either. And that's another guy. That's another guy who's dedicated to the work. Millsap, the comp with Liddell certainly makes sense, although Millsap's a little bit bigger. But Liddell, just finding a way to win. He's going to be on an NBA roster, and he will contribute to winning.
I'll go one step further. He's a 100% rotation player. Like, it's just what's going to happen with his career. I don't really see it.
An all-star at any point?
No. I mean, unless we consider an all NBA team similar, but he's a rotation caliber player who can make an all defensive team at some point. That's where I have him. It's 100% rotation level player, which is a good player to have. By the way, we're talking about EJ Liddell. Would love for him to drop to the Heat at 27.
Oh, hold on. Yeah.
Oh,
there's no chance.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Dalen Terry.
you're right. Yeah, you're right. Let's go to Dalen Terry's upside scale.
I've got him 18% fringe.
Oh, very specific.
I think there's a pretty decent chance he ends up kind of flaming out.
Can't put it all together. Yeah.
Yeah,
he's got the skills.
Raw. We'll see.
Yeah.
I've got him 76% chance of being a rotation player.
Whoa.
I just think that I'm going to bet on the length. I'm going to bet on the athleticism, and I'm going to bet on the energy. I'm a sucker for dudes who just like actually try, and maybe that's not enough, but he's also a really good athlete. He's got great measurables. You like all that stuff. I'm like, all right, cool. Like, this guy's got all the measurables. He really tries. And some of the stuff out of the scouting and people you talk to about Dalen Terry, there's a little bit of a maturity concern with him. But if he ends up on a team like Miami, where they can harness that and a good culture, like these teams that are kind of at the end of the first round are the winning teams, right? Like, those could be, like, whether it's Miami or Golden State or one of these other Milwaukee, like these teams that are down here with good cultures and good foundations and winning atmospheres. I think he could really thrive, and that's right where he's projected. So I'm going to bet on all of that stuff, and so I've got him a pretty good chance of being a rotation player. 5% chance that he's an all-star. I'll go 1% chance star, and I don't even feel good about that. That seems high to me. But the fact that, like, it's just, when you have those kinds of measurables, you always have to hold out like the 1% chance that he ends up being the next Kawhi Leonard. And that's really the only reason why I'm doing it, is because of just the insane measurables on him. So, and I don't feel good about it, but I feel like I had to put it in there. So, that's my upside for him.
No, given his skill set and his size and everything else, there's the potential to become Iguodala. There's also the potential to become DJ Wilson or something along those lines, where he just can't seem to tie it all together. All the tools, everything else, just can't seem to find his role on there. So
Yeah.
it's tough. Wilson again, another player that projected to be a high impact player. It just never turned out that way
So
throughout his NBA career. So let's look into the
Our big
potential
board?
fit for Miami. Yeah, let's go into yeah.
Well,
and-
Liddell's
and-
perfect. Liddell's perfect because if you're able to
Okay.
get Liddell and
Yeah.
you have him being the understudy to PJ Tucker, the guy who
Yeah.
he already studies at Ohio State,
Yeah.
like you first of all, you talk about a great fit for the Miami Heat. I think if EJ Liddell were to draft a team for him to go to, it might be the Miami Heat, right? Like if
I'd
it were
agree.
up to him, he just like you said seems like such a Heat player and embodies all the things that they want to that they embody. And so I think EJ Liddell, of all the guys we talked about, not just today but yesterday, all the guys that we've talked about in the draft, he is the best probable fit. And considering that PJ Tucker is on this player option, we think he's going to come back to Miami, but he's 37 years old, and we know that the Heat are looking for the next like heir apparent at that 4 spot because they know that that's the kind of player that fits next to Bam long term. EJ Liddell could just be that right away.
Yeah, you're drafting for immediate impact on a winning culture to compete for a title, and you're also setting yourself up for a really secure future because he is, as you said, the heir apparent to PJ Tucker. So he is a perfect fit. Now, here's the bad news, Heat fans. Sorry to everybody listening to the show. We've had a lot of people already asking about a scouting report for Liddell. The reason why, he's a great player. There is almost a 0 chance that he's going to drop to Miami at 27. We're talking about him because he has been mocked in some cases. I saw him mocked in the 2nd round. Very unlikely. Just the way you hear him play, hear him talk about his commitment to the game, his understanding, his awareness. This is a guy who's going to get it. The knock on him, he's undersized. That's the reality. And maybe some player or some team will say, you know what? I don't want another 6'6" big. I can't afford to take a guy like that. But I think that would be a mistake. And so I don't think there's any reason that he dropped to 27 realistically. In fact, you and I both see him being a perfect fit for his hometown Bulls. I think they're picking 16th overall. So
I'm a little. I won't go so far as to say there's no chance he falls to 27 because
very slim, man. Very
you
slim.
and I are basically saying like, all right, there's no chance this guy's ever going to be a star or even an all-star probably, but he's going to be a high-level rotation player in the NBA.
Because
some teams want to take swings in the first round. Like it's really easy to go find a rotation player.
That's why he's not a lottery player, though. But that's why he's not a lottery. He's a guy.
He's also. I'm just
saying.
Why
you bring him in. You bring him into a roster that's like almost fully formed, Bullsish, right? Like the Bulls are like flirting with it. They're going to bring back. It
just seems a little high for a guy with no chance at All-Star, even at 16. It seems a little high. I'm not saying that the Bulls do it, but the reason if EJ Liddell falls, the reason he would is because there's teams ahead of Miami looking to take a swing at somebody.
Like I can't.
Well, I don't know. Milwaukee could go in another direction. We're going to talk about Walker Kessler later this week. He could be a good fit there.
Yeah, look, that's potential. The way I see it is if you're already competing for a playoff spot or even a title contender somewhere, and even if you're a fringe title contender, you add a guy like him, you're not gonna overturn the boat. Maybe he won't raise the ceiling significantly, but he's gonna keep you going there. He's gonna make all the hustle plays. He's gonna help you win. There's going to be a game or two that he's going to help seal in your favor, and that might be all the difference. Look at Boston. Like Boston, again, the talent, you got the 2 J's, whatever, but a guy like Grant Williams, to some effect, he kind of keeps things steady. He's a player that you can throw out there, and he helped win them against the Milwaukee Bucks too. So I think they'd like to.
Look, you're not getting me to knock EJ Liddell. I'm maybe I'm a little bit in denial. I'm trying to talk it into existence here.
I see.
He falls into 27.
Yeah,
but
he's garbage.
Every other team listening to this, you don't want anything to do with him. Huge attitude concerns. Just stay away. Major stay away.
Sure.
I heard something about his ankle. You don't want to deal with it. Dalen Terry, much better chance that he's there at 27. He's another guy who he's basically considered a end of first round, maybe kind of early second round kind of guy. So the chances that he's on the board when the Heat are picking at 27 are relatively high. And I think if you're the Heat, the question is, do we think we can harness all of this potential and get a useful player out of it? If the answer is yes, I think that he's going to be very high on their board. If they're even questioning it a little bit and his fit and whether or not they have like the want to try to harness all of that, like depending on what they think of his ceiling, then maybe he'll be a little lower on their board if they're not totally into him. So, I think he's more of a realistic option.
Yeah,
Where
no
Liddell's
doubt.
probably the dream option.
Yeah, well, despite his terrible attitude and decaying health. Uh, look, I'm, the questions about Terry they're pretty obvious. You laid them out pretty clearly, and yet kind of talking it out. Like, can he fit into this Heat roster? Like, what would his role be as just could he fill in for Caleb Martin if you see the
Yeah.
potential for Martin departing? Yeah, I think that could be his role. That seems like a likely path for him. And if that's the case, look, Caleb had some really good games for Miami over the course of the regular season. He had some impact minutes, and that's all you're looking for. I wouldn't expect Terry to have the same impact right away. Eventually, he might, but I think you
Kind
still
of
want
like
to
a
be.
Victor Oladipo, like what they got in small doses from Vic, where you're just like this long, kind of lengthy playmaker that's going to switch a
Yeah,
bunch of things defensively. Like we
that's
obviously
quick
think
though.
Oladipo has another gear to get to,
Right.
right? That probably doesn't exist for Dalen Terry, but what we saw from Oladipo early on is probably the kind of role. Look, I mean, guys like Dalen Terry, if he hits, everybody can use the long switchable defender who can play make, like and hit open threes. Like every team is looking for that guy.
He's just not. He's not as able to switch 1 through 5, and given Miami's defense, like I don't think he's.
I mean, not a lot of guys can switch 1 through 5.
No,
But
I
even
know,
like
but
1 through 3 is given his
length.
the
Yeah,
length is good, but he needs to get stronger.
yeah, that's the
But can
thing.
he
It's
switch
like,
like 1 through 4? Can he switch 1 through 3? I think that's a reasonable outcome for him. Like 1 through
okay.
5, like there's like 3 guys in the NBA who could actually do it. We throw that term around all the time. Like there's not a lot of guys who can actually do it. It's like Ben
And yet
Simmons, Draymond
Liddell,
Green, and Bam Adebayo.
yeah,
Like even
and yet Liddell
Iguodala
might be
wasn't
one of
switching
them.
to the 5.
No.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, that was a good episode breaking down a couple of key players. We'll see how it all pans out next week. And of course, we'll be talking about some more players. I know you'll be interviewing Walker Kessler's head coach, Bruce Pearl, for
Yep.
tomorrow's episode. So make sure to stay tuned for that. That's going to be another great episode talking about the big man. It should be a fun conversation, and he might be available at 27 as well. If you've got other suggestions, other names you want us to explore, make sure you drop them into our comments, or of course, you can always reach us via email or Twitter and many other different ways. The first picks of the Ultimate NBA Mock Draft have already been made. Who do we select? Search now for Ultimate NBA Mock Draft and get over 50 insiders, the Odyssey sports experts, the draft experts of the Locked On NBA Big Board. The Ultimate NBA Mock Draft is underway. Make the Ultimate NBA Mock Draft your second listen today. This is David Ramil signing off for now. Thanks so much for joining me, Wes.
Wrap it up, B.